There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Pam Chambers, and I am so thrilled to have Peggy O'Mara. We've become pals in the past few months, I guess, huh, Peggy? Yes, and let me just let you know Peggy is a publisher and editor for over 30 years for Mothering magazine. And then she also served on a couple boards, am I correct? Peggy?
Oh yeah, lots of yes, yeah. But I don't. Yeah, Attachment Parenting International and Holistic Moms. Yeah,
Yes, she served on a couple boards, and she also was the founder of mothering.com.
yeah. Which I'm not associated with now, but yeah, I started that in 1995, which was
I know.
yeah.
Well, I'm getting ready to have my fourth grandbaby, and I couldn't wait to talk to Peggy about how to introduce this child to the siblings and sibling rivalry because you wrote a terrific article as far as involving children in childbirth. Am I correct, Peggy?
Yeah, I did. I think that's a good way to really kind of head off some of the sibling rivalry because I think like when a child doesn't know where the baby came from, that's when they're going to say, "Could you take that baby back, please?" Like, where did that baby come from? Did you get that baby at the store? So I think during your pregnancy, if you involve your child as, and again, as there's no rule, it's as much as you're comfortable and your child is comfortable, and that's going to be different. Depends on different ages, depends on what your comfort level is. But if you can involve your child by maybe taking your child to one of your prenatal appointments, letting him or her listen to the baby's heartbeat through the stethoscope,
Ooh,
that can be
that's
very
good.
exciting, right? That's very cool. It makes it more real. Let them touch your belly, answer any questions they have, but keep it simple because sometimes they'll ask questions, but they don't really want this long, complicated answer. Just, keep it simple. Tell them their birth story, tell them how they were born and how that was. And consider, I think, having them attend the birth if they want to and if you feel comfortable with that. And that depends on where the setting is. In a home birth, obviously, that would be easier. But a lot of hospitals and birth centers will accommodate siblings and family members at the birth as well. But make sure that you have no matter where you have the birth, make sure that you have like a dedicated person whose job it is to take care of that child so that you don't have to think while you're having a baby, what's happening with my child? I need to worry about, my child. So have somebody that, a relative, a close person to the child, a grandma, an aunt and uncle, aunt or uncle, someone who can be with them through that experience. And be prepared. Sometimes the baby comes in the middle of the night. Even if the kids want to come, they don't even get up in the middle of the night. Or you decide at the last minute, or they decide at the last minute, no, I don't think I want to be here. Or maybe they come in just right at the end of the birth when the baby's coming out. So I think and read books. There's lots of good books about having a sibling. And so I think just as much as you can be open and talk about it and not make it all secretive, I think that will make them more welcoming to this new little sibling they're going to have. And again, it depends on the age, right? The older they are, the more able they can be kind of a helper. If they're a little bit younger, they may, definitely feel a little bit more threatened. I remember my oldest two children are 18 months apart, and my daughter, when my son was born, she would come to me and she'd say, "Papa take baby, Mama take Lally.
Oh,
Get this baby out of here." So, there's always going to be that. They're displacing each other, so there's going to be some of that for sure.
yeah. I've also heard that it's good to give the kids some responsibilities with the child. Like, hey, why don't you go pick out the outfit that the baby will wear today? Or make them
That's
feel like they're kind of the big brother and they have a role and a responsibility to help you care for the child and to help care for the child.
for sure.
Yeah, I
And I
think
think
that's helpful.
one of the things that surprised me was the way I felt like my loyalties were torn when my second child was born because I was used to being this, the three of us, the baby and my husband and me. And then the baby came, and even though I wanted the baby, it was displacing what I was used to also. It was going to change things. So I think we all go through that in the family in terms of adjusting to a new member. That's a big deal. Uh,
Yeah.
but I think that there are, again, I think just answering their questions and involving them, and I think that there's a lot of good ways that that will include the child in the experience and make them, I think, again, more open to the new baby.
Yeah, and I do notice. I think parents are taking. At least I was taken back on sibling rivalry. How much sibling rivalry exists,
Yeah,
and at times as a parent, you think, "Oh my God, what am I doing wrong? I've got all this sibling rivalry going on." But like you said, it's a perfectly normal part of a family. Am I correct?
Well, see, that was hard for me. I didn't realize that. I heard that from somebody else when I was a younger parent. And it was so reassuring for me to hear that sometimes kids are the most outrageous with their siblings because they can kind of get away with it. That's just somebody you can really test your boundaries with, somebody who's not going away, somebody you can do some push and pull with. You're too young to be fighting with your parents yet. And you're just kind of working this out with a sibling. So I do think the most reassuring thing, it's not your fault. It's inevitable that there's going to be just some, tossing and turning, some definitely some rivalry. But even if it's not rivalry, just this sort of, they're just my son would see his brother, and he would jump on him, no matter where they were, no matter how old they were. I mean, it would just be, he would just jump on him and wrestle with him. And what did he grow up to be but a wrestler? I mean, he is a jujitsu instructor now, my son, who used to on my other son all the time. And like so many of us, I didn't know. First of all, I thought, is it my fault? Then I realized that the more attention that I gave to it, the more it perpetuated it. And I wanted to figure out a way I could give less attention to it, but still protect both of my sons in the situation, especially my younger son, who I felt was being a little bit bullied. But then, as I thought about it, I realized, wait a minute, I'm labeling my older son the bully. I can't win either way. I've got to figure out a way to really accommodate both of them. So I think that kids are going to do that. They're going to roughhouse. They're going to play. They're wrestle. Sometimes we think that because we like peace, that's not going to happen, but it definitely happens. And I think that we have to figure out a way to kind of not be kind of a referee, but not try to manage the situation. And I think we can do that by agreeing on some rules. I mean, agree on some rules with the kids. What is too much? When do I need to intervene? When do you need my help? And when is it just play that looks like really roughhousing to me? I'm worried about them, but they're doing fine. And as you said earlier, the dynamic is always a little bit more complex than we might know. So it's important that we really observe it, that we don't give it too much attention, but that we also protect our children so that, one isn't being bullied by the other too much, or that, it doesn't get too out of hand, or nobody gets hurt, of course. So I think setting down some ground rules helps with that.
Yeah, it does. I know we talked earlier when my kids informed me that I used to tell them when they fight, just go ahead and kill each other, because I was so exasperated and they were trying to drag me into it. Well, exactly. They did this, and I'm just like, well, just kill each other. Just leave me alone. They kind of calmed down though. They didn't know what to do with that information.
That's pretty good. You went right to the throat with that one.
I know. That was my exasperation.
Yeah, but I think that's also the truth of it, is like how, you feel so that they kind of put on the show for you, right? Did you feel that way too? That they kind of think that you're charged by it, and they don't exactly, and maybe they're just having fun and they're thinking, oh, I used to call it my sons are called Finney and Bram, and I would call it the Finney and Bram show. Here goes the Finney and Bram show to get mom crazy again. It would just be.
Yeah, so all of you, you're not alone. We as mothers have all struggled with the sibling rivalry, and I have felt guilty, like I'm doing something wrong. What am I doing to promote it? But like you said, it really is just a normal process of growing up that kids will have with each other.
Yeah, that they're the safest with their siblings. Think of it. They're so safe. Their siblings aren't going anywhere. They can test these things. They can learn social rules how do they learn things? That's how they learn their limits with their siblings. It really is such an important relationship. And I think
I think it's important too that we don't put ourselves in a position where they try to get us to say whose fault it is, because sometimes it'll be like so-and-so started it. When you see the conflict happening, what I've read is the best thing to do is just saying, hey, you guys are having a hard time getting along. Even if somebody's bashed somebody else, hit them over the head or something, because once you say, oh, well, you're the bad guy because you hit him, we don't really know what's happened before he hit him. Who knows?
Yeah, and also if somebody acts out like that, they have something else going on as well, don't they? I mean, generally there's something else, going on there. So I think that's good advice, what you're saying.
Yeah, just to say, hey, it looks like you can't get along. Let's calm down, take some breaths, and maybe just have them get to calm down. And maybe let's talk about it in 10 minutes as far as what's going on. And they probably will forget by the 10 minutes are up.
Well, I found this amazing thing sort of accidentally. When something would happen with my kids, I'd bring them upstairs on my bed and sit on the bed, and I'd listen to each side. I'd say, well, okay, what's your side of the story? And then I'd listen to the other one, okay, what's your side of the story? And that was it. They would just jump off the bed. As soon as they told their side of the story, that's all they wanted to do. They didn't even want a resolution as much as to be heard. They wanted to be heard. How was that for you? So I think, and that also teaches them to see what the other person experienced. So sometimes when, my younger son, who I felt was being bullied, like when his older brother heard how that really affected him, it did change his older brother's behavior. So I think really asking them, trying to get both sides of the story objectively. You don't even have to referee. You don't even have to have a conclusion, because like I said, I think they want to be heard. They want you to know that they had a legitimate reason for their behavior. And I think that's what's really important to remember. All of us always have a good reason for our behavior. We may be misguided. We might have bad information, but we're not like stupid. We're not like going, oh, I'm going to go make a mistake now. We just do the best we can. And sometimes, again, it's not the right solution, but we really are acting out of what we think, out of the information that we have at the time.
Yeah, we all feel better when we feel heard and loved.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter so much the resolution. If we feel heard, it's just wonderful. And the kids go away happy, feeling heard. And that brings me to another topic you had talked about. I read a recent article on your blog about teaching kids empathy and compassion. And there were some really great exercises you said in that article.
Yeah, there's
some of those exercises.
Well, and it's really this whole idea of social emotional learning, SEL, they call it, and they're teaching in schools now. And it has a lot to do with what we were saying before about understanding the other person's point of view.
Right.
So there are two games. One is which you just, and it's not exactly a game, but it's like, let me just read it here real quick. Because I want to make sure that I say this right. Oh yeah, this is the mindful kindness. There's a mindful kindness chant, and you can use it in school. You can use it as home, and you start by asking the student. So ask your child to imagine someone in their life, or so imagine their brother or their sibling, who could use some kindness, and then or somebody that they have a negative relationship with, and then all together as a group or quietly to themselves, they say, may they be happy, may they be healthy, may they be safe. So that's kind of a Buddhist practice where you take something negative and somebody you're having trouble with, and you wish them well, basically, and it sort of shifts the way that you think about that person. So again, this can be sort of a private thing where somebody can just think of them. And then as a group, you can say, I wish them well. I wish that they're happy. I wish that they're safe. But the one that
say that.
Pardon me?
To verbally say that out loud also ingrains it more into them. That process of saying it out loud, it's a very, it can connect them more by, verbally saying it.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
When we just think about it, it just sits in our head and mulls around. But
it's so profound when you say it. And the other thing, which I've done this in adult groups, but this is with kids where, again, you toss a ball, and the person that catches the ball, you compliment them. You just say something nice about them. Isn't that so sweet? Yeah. So much of this is really about self-esteem, isn't it? It's about building self-esteem, and kids that often don't have good self-esteem or having trouble with it at a certain age, they tend to act out more, and I think that's where we see some of the conflicts. But check out the article about teaching compassion. And I think most importantly, model it. Model compassion to yourself, to your children, and to other people around you. Because if your children hear you just, talking about somebody and grousing about them and how messed up they are, they're just going to model that. But if they hear you if they hear you showing compassion or explaining, because often, and I found this in business as well as with my kids, often you just need to tell the person in the conflict why that other person might be acting that way. Maybe you know something about them. They had a really bad day, or there's something going on in their family, or, you just need to sometimes give more information to a person in order for them to have compassion for the other.
Well, you're exactly right. And they say the best ways to communicate to children, the number one is role modeling.
What
That's
else?
the most effective way to communicate to children. And then the second one is body language.
Yeah.
And the third one would be through articulation, verbal articulation. So you are correct. Role modeling is the most effective way to communicate.
Well,
And I don't think parents realize that.
well, I think we're animals, right? You think of apes, and that's what you see. We mimic. That's how we learn. We don't learn by being told what to do as much as by being what we see other people doing, and that's just how humans learn. They learn by mimicking. I mean,
Oh,
we
exactly.
have a lot of experiences like that where even like I remember taking a dance class years ago, and afterwards I would feel like the person, the instructor, they would just kind of take on that sense of that person from seeing them, so much right in front of you. And especially with parents, they're
Yeah.
basically our apprentices, right? They're learning how to be in the world, but from us. And what I've been so encouraged to find out, because when you're parenting, you do the best you can, and I believe that parents are the experts in their own life. But I look back at my life with my kids, and I think I did a pretty good job. But there's things I would do differently now, right? Now that I know
Oh,
what I know now. But
exactly.
what's cool is that, and I bet you found this too. If I get more consciousness, so do my kids, no matter how old they are. Even my adult children. If I sort of expand and grow in some way, I see them doing that too. So it's profound, really, how much. Um, so again, if we're trying to teach our children compassion and empathy, then we must be compassionate and empathic with them in their struggles, right? We must believe that they have a good reason for their behavior, not
Mhm.
call them names, talk from our feelings, not attack them, and just say, I don't know what to do when you're fighting. I'm your mom. I love you both. I'm afraid you're going to get hurt. I don't know how to handle, just, you don't have to like, oh, I don't know how to handle this, but you have to, if you talk from your own feelings about your own discomfort with the situation, often they then want to help you solve that problem. And I think, that don't be afraid to talk about your own discomfort with the situation with them rather than, because I think we think as parents, right? We have to know it and we have to do it and we have to fix it and we have to make it better. And,
Yeah,
sometimes.
you don't make it better. They have to resolve it and they have to learn. And there comes a point where you just step out of the picture totally and say, "Hey, this is you guys. You guys got to figure this out."
For sure. But you have to you have to help them with some tools. I mean, you don't want to
Yes,
rescue them, right?
exactly.
You want to
Communication
rescue them,
skills.
but you've got to give them some tools for self-understanding, self-reflection. Like when something happens, and you kind of touched on it earlier, what's that going on for them? Why did I saw that you hit your brother? I mean, what were you thinking? What's happening for you that you do you notice that when certain things happen, when you get rushed or nervous, that you kind of lash out at others? And what else could you do the next time? Let's think of some other things. So I think really we have to help them develop these social emotional skills.
Right. I like your idea too, where you just set them on a bed and said each of them had to tell their own story. I think that's terrific.
I cannot believe that. I mean, I was like, my mouth was open. I thought, okay, this is just the beginning. We're going to tell our stories, and we'll hash it out and see who's right. And we're like, nope, bye bye, mom.
Oh, that's cute. Like a big aha.
Yeah.
How well it all went for you. That's really nice. Now, selfishly speaking, I'm going to ask you a question because, like, what do you do, like, when, my daughter's getting ready to have this baby? So when she has this baby, like, people come over, and I've heard that, yeah, you give a baby a gift, but you should kind of include, maybe the other kids in a gift as well. What is the proper protocol to help, reduce sort of that, send him back kind of thing after he comes home from the hospital?
I think
What about
that is
gifts?
perfect. Like you've got to somehow not ignore that the child that's already there when you go to see the new child. You have to be aware as an adult of how you can include that child in the conversation. I mean, maybe you're bringing a present. Maybe it's as simple as just saying, talking to the child while you're there. Including the child in conversation with the mom. I think really just being aware of that child, because sometimes we don't even look at that child, right? We're looking at the baby, and if you
I
look,
know everybody's goo goo
you'll
gaga.
know what to do. You'll know how they're doing. Either they're happy playing with the toy, or they're kind of standing back and wanting to be noticed, and need an arm around them. And And I think it's, and that brings up the whole postpartum period, which is a time when you really need a lot of help. You need friends and relatives to come around to bring some food, to play with the kid, your other child, and to kind of help with that transition, because it's so intense for those first 2 to 6 weeks, if not, years. But
Yes. And I think too, for it would be nice to even talk to the other siblings about their own personal experience. Well, what do you think? What are some of the things you want to teach your brother or sister? Sort of getting them involved as far as what are their plans, in handling this brother. That kind of thing might help them feel a little less,
But I think that's also, there's a balance, right? Depending on the child's age, you want to make them feel bigger by asking them how they can help, but you also don't want to forget that they're still a baby too, And
that's a good point.
Because it depends on, like, my two were so close together. My oldest was 18 months when my second was born, so I did literally have two babies.
Yes.
And even as you know, they're like toddlers, they're still babies, they still have a lot of needs. So I think it's a balance again between soliciting, engaging their cooperation, engaging their ideas,
right,
and not, and also treating them whatever is appropriate for their age. Don't expect them to do big, and then they can be all cool and do big, and then.
Well, that's a good point. I never thought of that aspect. Yeah, and sometimes the siblings will regress.
Yeah.
They'll want their pacifier again, or they'll have a bottle.
That kind of speaks to that whole thing too, right? They're kind of reminding you, I'm still a baby too.
Don't forget about me. Yeah. But that can happen a lot. They can regress, the older ones.
But also, I think overall, siblings grow up to be the best of friends, and they're really good friends when they're growing up, and they share secrets and do things with each other. I mean, the stories I hear now of the things my kids did, I'm like, how did I miss some of that, But so I don't think we should worry about that too much, trying to do it perfectly, or like with your daughter, there's going to be some rough spots, but, I really think it's all about acknowledging, looking in their eyes, like you said, modeling, but also looking in their eyes, acknowledging their experience, asking them about their experience. I think, right?
That's a good one. I know I'm going to change topics here, but we had somebody pose on the question platform. What about what are the birthing centers like at hospitals now? Because I wanted to choose a home birth for my third child, because my experience was not good in the hospital with the doctors that I had. So I wanted something different. I said, there's got to be a better way. I did research, so forth and so on. But I know one of the people in the Facebook groups had said, the birthing centers basically are a birthing room, right? Inside the hospital, just in case an accident happens. I don't know what the current birthing rooms look like. Do you have any idea?
Oh yeah, well, there's birthing centers inside hospitals, and there's also independent birth centers all over the country. So there's also independent birth centers.
I get it. Okay.
And then there's some states, again, like in New Mexico, we have a long tradition, because I think we're a really rural state, of home birth, and we have a lot of midwives trained in home birth, and they can, they can also do birth center births. But these are licensed midwives. So you have to look into the laws in your state. So generally, there are nurse midwives who can practice in hospitals and at home, and there are licensed midwives who generally just tend to practice either at home or in an independent birth center. There's a National Association of Childbearing Centers, NAC, and you can look up there the list of birthing centers, independent birthing centers.
Oh, okay.
As far as birthing centers and hospitals, I mean, I know in Santa Fe, it's, we have, what I think you're saying is they're trying to make hospital birthing delivery areas more like birth centers by having rooms that are
right,
that can accommodate the family and are just a little bit more homey, and sometimes they even have a tub because people like to maybe get in the water before the birth. So I just encourage people to really think about that deeply, like as you did, and if that's your preference, then to try to find a practitioner who practices in the place that you want to give birth, because that person then can guide you about like where's the, how to do this and give you some tips on how it works in your community.
Right. Because I know for myself, the doctor was very different, the one who delivered at home compared to the ones that didn't deliver at home. Because I had the cord wrapped around my baby's neck like 5 times. But I know if I would have been with another doctor who had they would have probably performed a C-section, but they just knew how to follow it all the way along. And they made me feel so much at ease and comfortable. It was terrific. So,
They
yeah.
talk about, I think birth advocates will talk about two models of birth, the medical model and the midwifery model. And the medical model, because OBGYNs are trained basically to be surgeons, they're
Right.
really qualified to do surgery. So they might have a little bit more of a difficult time sitting on their hands during the labor and
Right.
doing those sort of, care things that midwives do so well. So the midwifery model is more, to work with non-drug soothers, to really be in tune with the mom and to really have that personal relationship. And they have, really good birth outcomes as a result of that because of their involvement and because of really helping the mom with the labor part of birth, and how to navigate that. And we're animals after all, which I always go back to. So what we really want is to feel safe and free from dogma wherever we are. We want to feel like private and not so when we're looked at or tested and kind of can mess with us because it just makes us a little bit more nervous.
How did you now when you talk of the like home birth, would children be too young to maybe experience it, to be traumatized, or if the siblings were involved?
I think it depends on the child, right? You can imagine the child that's really precocious and wants to do everything and see everything. I'm going to be their mom and I'm going to be your midwife, you know,
That's a good point.
right? And then another one that might be just a little bit more reticent or shy. So I think the answer to your question overall is yeah, I think they could be too young. But it would really depend on the child and their interest. And you could gauge it by asking them, they want to come to the appointment, just involving them and kind of just seeing how eager they were, or if they just kind of wanted to know a little bit, or, I think you have to really play it based on the individual child and not exactly their age, but just more their temperament.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Because I think, there can be some, you can be tell by their body language too.
Yeah.
If they're resistant or, they may not like to see mommy in pain or, so you kind of have to gauge it by their own personal reaction. Like
Well, my story of like my fourth child was a home birth, and I had three children already, and they came in like right at the end of the birth, and it was so interesting because two of the children came around to see the baby, and my one son just stopped in the doorway and watched my face. He was just interested in what I was doing. And I don't know, the baby, was like just right even in that moment, you could see they're different.
how different they were in their response.
Yeah.
So kind of letting them gauge it, so to speak.
Yeah, and then the birth before that, my two older kids were going to attend the birth of their brother, but he was born in the middle of the night, and we just didn't have the time to wake them up. Like,
Did you have all of your births were at home?
three of them were at home. My first one was in a hospital. I was lucky. I lived in southern New Mexico, and there was a home birth doctor that moved to our area, so that gave confidence, that she had experience in home birth and was a medical doctor as well. And then she also she moved up to Albuquerque, and I did as well with my family. And then she did third, and then fourth was with a nurse midwife at home. But yeah, so three at home, but one in the hospital. Okay. But like you just kind of evaluate, and you maybe didn't like part of your other experience, and I encourage women to go for that because it's a once in a lifetime experience, and you're going to remember it your entire life and process it your entire life. So really go for it, the right kind of environment that's going to really feel comfortable for you.
Did you find that when the baby was born, how did your children react, the siblings react to the new baby?
Oh, they just couldn't believe. I mean, they just were touching the baby and kissing the baby and just like, oh yeah, they were.
I could see how it would be very positive to involve them in that because it would feel very bonding. Like they're participating.
And again, I think the factors are, so you have to figure out a way that you're not distracted and worried about that other child, right? So somebody has to be really on that, really taking care of that child so you're not distracted by that.
Oh, I
And
like that.
right,
Somebody's
just
smart. Yeah.
following the cues of the child, like, or even saying to your child, leave if you want to, stay if you want to, you get to decide. And also that other person really tuning into them and talking to them and saying, well, let's go get a drink of water, or, because you don't want them there. Like if things get an emergency or things get difficult,
Yeah.
maybe you don't want them during that time. And that's what, again, this protector person
Yeah.
who's going to be there for them would be taken care of.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're in a crowd, they say you need to point to somebody and say, call 911. You, Tom, call
Yeah,
911.
that's
If you just say call 911, nobody may do it.
good.
So that makes sense. Wow. So now tell me a little bit about Mothering Magazine. When did you start that, or when was it first published?
Oh, what a
How
long
did you get
story.
involved?
I bought the magazine, my family and I bought the magazine in 1980. By buying it, I mean that we just really took it over and started making payments out of the magazine to pay for the magazine.
Right.
So it was a Cinderella story for sure. And it was started in 1976 by another gal, Adeline Evanson. And then I was able to take it over. And at the time, it was just a really little funky hippie magazine. But all the people that we were like, I was part of really the back to land, the back to the landers. We were like sort of the pioneers of the natural food movement and the natural living movement, which we've seen now become mainstream. So we were
Yeah.
the people that, disillusioned by the Vietnam War, went back to the land, started to grow our own food, started to can, made herbal things, had cotton stuff, all this stuff that's all popular now. Um,
You're
and
the pioneer.
we were kind of pioneers, yeah, for sure. And so that group of people, when they started having kids, were like, well, what about education and having a baby and circumcision and vaccinations, and what do we do about all these things? So that's how mothering started, really just kind of having a lot of conversations and letters and articles about all those issues, from the point of view of the person that wanted to live kind of naturally minded, in a natural family living kind of way. And, how did you do that? And how did you have what kind of toys and all kinds of things. So it was started then, and it grew, and over time, the
It
idea
grew and grew.
surprisingly became much more mainstream, much more accepted. Baby slings, which they were just, nobody even had them back in the day, and now
No, I didn't have any baby
all this
slings.
fashion statement, and dads are wearing them and looking all sexy, and um, so that's kind of the beginnings of that, and I published it for almost over 30 years.
Yes,
And
magazine business is one of the toughest. They say magazines and restaurants are two of the toughest businesses.
magazines
You
and
made a
restaurants,
success.
yeah. Well, there are a lot of risk, and there's not a lot of profit. And I think if you get huge, there is. But when we were pretty big, we had about 100,000 circulation, and really grew a big website, and had a big community, and I think really impacted the culture in terms of the ideas that we shared, and that have now become, like I said, more mainstream. So, yeah.
Wow, that's terrific. Well, if they want to find you, Peggy, they go to peggyo'mara.com. That's
Fantastic. Thank you.
OMARA.com.
Okay.
Yes, and she's got terrific articles. And tell them about your toolkit. I love your toolkit.
Thank you. I have a lot of articles I'm posting regularly, several times a week. I have a newsletter where you can get that I put out every 2 weeks, that basically has the most updated articles in it that you can link to. And then I have a toolkit for normal birth, which is basically a childbirth education course online that has separate entries on pain and pain. That's the biggest one.
I know.
Pain and breastfeeding and postpartum and all those things, and
Right.
and then your pregnancy, kind of a inspirational piece as well. That's week by week, and talking about what's happening throughout your pregnancy. And those are right on the homepage under the store, I think it is. Yeah.
Oh, terrific. Well, great. Well, Peggy, I'm so glad you joined me today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and this was great.
Hi to everybody. Again, Peggy O'Mara.
Yeah, and
And
follow me on Facebook. I'm also on Facebook, Peggy O'Mara Journalist, and on Twitter, Peggy OM. So, yeah, join the
check her
conversation.
out.
Yeah,
Connect with her.
yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you, Pam.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.